The Alpha left his cubs with a human scout. They came back, leading an entire Empire fleet commander. Vexthal stood at the edge of the dying transport ship, his 4 cubs huddled behind his massive frame. The Krath were a proud warrior species, their scales reflecting the dim emergency lights like broken mirrors. His ship had taken critical damage during a border skirmish, and now they were stranded in neutral space, with life support failing. Through the viewport, he saw a small human scout vessel approaching. Humans, the newest species to join the galactic community. Young, weak, with no natural armor or weapons. Most species considered them barely worth noticing, but Vexthal had no choice. His cubs would die if he didn't act fast. The human who boarded was small, even by their species standards. She wore a patched flight suit and carried a tool kit instead of a weapon. Her name was Sarah Chen, and she looked at the massive alien warrior with curious brown eyes, not fear. "Your ship's core is collapsing," Sarah said simply, running her scanner over the damaged systems. "I can stabilize it, but it'll take 6 hours minimum, maybe longer." Vexthal's translator chip struggled with human idioms, but the meaning was clear. 6 hours. His distress beacon had already been broadcasting for 3. Enemy patrols would return long before then. He had to lead them away from this location, but his cubs couldn't survive another jump in this damaged ship. "Human," he growled, his voice like grinding stone. "I must draw the enemy fleet away from here. Can your vessel protect 4 small ones?" Sarah looked at the cubs peeking around their father's legs. The smallest one couldn't have been more than 3 solar cycles old. In Krath culture, asking another species to guard your offspring was unthinkable. It was the greatest trust one could offer, and the greatest shame if refused. "How long?" she asked. 3 days, maybe 4. I will return for them." Vexthal's claws flexed nervously. "Or another of my kind will come." Sarah looked at her tiny scout ship, then back at the massive alien warrior and his frightened children. Every regulation, every first contact protocol, every safety measure screamed at her to refuse, but she saw something in the Alpha's eyes: desperation, love, the same look her own father had when he'd protected her during the colony raids. "I'll keep them safe," she promised. Vexthal did something that shocked Sarah. He lowered his head, a gesture of deep respect among the Krath. Then he knelt before his cubs, speaking in their native language. The translator could only catch fragments: honor, survival, trust. The cubs trembled but nodded. Within the hour, Vexthal had drawn the enemy fleet away, his damaged ship barely holding together. Sarah was alone with 4 alien cubs who didn't speak her language and whose biology she barely understood. The first day was chaos. The cubs wouldn't eat human food. They huddled in the cargo bay, hissing at her approach. Sarah spent hours researching Krath biology through the galactic database, mixing nutrient supplements that might work with their systems. The youngest cub, who she learned was named Kix, refused everything. Sarah remembered her grandmother's advice about scared children. Don't force, just offer. She sat outside the cargo bay, eating her own meals slowly, leaving small portions of the Krath supplements nearby. Hours passed. Finally, hunger won. Kix crept forward and took the food. By the second day, the cubs emerged from the cargo bay. They watched Sarah work on the ship's systems with intense curiosity. Krath cubs were taught engineering from birth, as it was their warrior culture's foundation. Sarah showed them her tools, let them help with simple repairs. Their small claws were actually better at reaching tight spaces than her fingers. The oldest cub, Thresh, began asking questions through the translator. Why did humans use such inefficient cooling systems? Why were their ships so small? Sarah answered honestly. Humans were new to space. They were still learning. They made mistakes. Thresh seemed to respect that honesty. Among the Krath, admitting weakness was normally shameful. But this human showed no shame in her limitations, only determination to improve. On the third day, enemy scouts found Sarah's ship. She'd hidden them in an asteroid field, but the Krath enemy faction had better scanners. They demanded she surrender the cubs. They claimed Vexithal was a traitor who had stolen military secrets. Sarah knew it was probably a lie, but even if it wasn't, she'd made a promise. She activated her ship's small defensive shields and sent an emergency signal on all human frequencies. Then she did something crazy. She piloted her tiny scout ship directly at the enemy frigate, weaving through their weapons fire like she was threading a needle. The cubs watched from the cockpit, their eyes wide with amazement. Humans weren't supposed to be pilots. They didn't have the reflexes or the spatial awareness of other species. But Sarah flew like she was dancing, her movements precise and fearless. She couldn't win the fight, but she could buy time. Her shields were failing when 3 human military vessels dropped out of jump space. They'd received her distress call and responded with full force. The enemy frigate retreated, surprised that humans would risk war over 4 alien cubs. Captain Rodriguez, the human military commander, contacted Sarah's ship. "You've caused quite a diplomatic incident, Scout Chen." "Sorry, sir," Sarah replied, not sounding sorry at all. "I made a promise." Rodriguez actually laughed. "Keep those cubs safe. We'll escort you until their father returns." But Vexthal didn't return on the 4th day, or the 5th. Sarah continued caring for the cubs, teaching them human games, learning Krath songs. Kix started calling her small mother in his language. Thresh showed her Krath combat techniques. The cubs were healing from their trauma, learning to trust again. On the 7th day, Sarah received a coded message. Vexthal was alive, but captured by his own people. He'd been declared a traitor for trusting a human with Krath cubs. He was sentenced to execution. Sarah felt cold rage fill her chest. She contacted Captain Rodriguez. "We need to get him back." Scout Chen. "That would mean entering Krath military space. We'd be starting a war." "Then we start a war," Sarah said flatly. "I promised him I'd keep his cubs safe." "That includes making sure they get their father back." The cubs heard the conversation through the translator. Thresh approached Sarah, his young scales hardening with determination. "If you go to our world, you will need proof. Proof that my father spoke truth about humans." "What kind of proof?" Sarah asked. Thresh clicked his claws together, thinking. "Show them us. Show them how you kept us alive, how you fought for us, how you taught us honor without being Krath." Sarah contacted every human ship in the sector. She told them Vexthal's story, how he'd trusted a stranger with his most precious treasures, how he'd chosen hope over fear. Within hours, dozens of human vessels began moving toward Krath space. Within days, hundreds. The human alliance hadn't existed long enough to have an empire, but they had something else. They had every colony, every outpost, every independent trader who heard about the Alpha who trusted a human and the human who refused to break that trust. Sarah's small scout ship led them all, with 4 Krath cubs in her cockpit, broadcasting their testimony on all frequencies. They spoke of the small mother who fed them when they were hungry, who taught them when they were curious, who fought for them when they were threatened. The Krath Empire's border defenses detected the fleet and prepared for war. Hundreds of human ships, civilian and military, all heading directly toward their homeworld. The Empire's War Council demanded to know what insult had caused this invasion. Sarah's voice came across every channel, calm and clear. "We're not here for war. We're here for Commander Vexthal. He trusted us with his cubs. We're returning them to their father, all of them, alive and well." The Krath Council was silent. No species had ever mobilized a fleet for such a reason. Warriors fought for territory, for resources, for glory, not for one Alpha's cubs. But then Thresh's voice joined Sarah's broadcast. "I am Thresh, son of Vexthal. This human honored my father's trust when her own kind said she was foolish. She risked her life when logic said to run. She called an entire fleet when wisdom said to abandon us. If this is what humans do for the cubs of a stranger, then my father was right to trust them, and you are wrong to punish him for showing true strength." The youngest cub, Kix, added his small voice. "The small mother kept us safe. She promised. Humans keep promises." The Krath Empire had never faced such a situation. They were warriors who respected strength and honor above all else, and somehow these weak humans had demonstrated both, not through conquest, but through loyalty to a single promise made to a desperate father. The Empire's supreme alpha made a decision. Vexithal was released, his honor restored. The human fleet was invited to land, not as conquerors, but as honored guests. Sarah's scout ship touched down first, and Vexithal ran to meet his cubs, gathering them in his massive arms. He approached Sarah, this tiny human who had changed everything, and lowered his head in the deepest respect his species could offer. "You kept them safe." "I made a promise," Sarah replied simply. Vexithal straightened, then did something unprecedented. He placed his clawed hand over his heart and spoke in carefully practiced human language. "The Krath Empire owes humanity a debt. We judged you weak because you lack claws and scales. We were wrong. True strength is keeping faith when all logic says to break it." The Supreme Alpha approached, her scales gleaming with authority. She looked at the fleet in orbit, hundreds of human ships that had come for 4 cubs and 1 promise. "Commander Vexthal showed wisdom we failed to see. Humanity is young, but they understand something we forgot. Honor is not just in victory, it is in the keeping of oaths, no matter the cost." She turned to Sarah. "Scout Chen, you have shown us what it means to be worthy of trust. The Krath Empire formally requests alliance with humanity. Not because you are strong in ships or weapons, but because you are strong in the ways that matter most." Sarah looked at the massive alien warrior, at his cubs clustering around both of them now, at the fleet that had come because one person refused to break a promise. She smiled. "We'd be honored." Kix tugged at Sarah's sleeve, looking up with huge eyes. "Small mother comes with us? Teaches more?" Sarah knelt down, ruffling the scales on the cub's head. "I'll visit. I promise." And because she was human, everyone there knew she would keep that promise too. The galaxy would learn what the Krath discovered that day. Humanity might not have the strongest ships or the deadliest weapons, but they had something more powerful. When a human made a promise, when they decided someone was worth protecting, they would move entire fleets to keep their word. An alpha had trusted a human scout with his cubs, expecting perhaps safety, perhaps survival. Instead, the cubs came back leading a fleet, teaching the galaxy that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't violence. It was loyalty. And in a galaxy of warriors and conquerors that made them the most dangerous allies and the most foolish enemies anyone could have.